Welcome back folks, and welcome to a new Dragons Dogma 2 news video. So today we're gonna be covering everything which has been happening with this game ever since the release, and if you are not following, there is quite a bit of a controversy happening right now around Dragons Dogma 2, so I wanted to talk more about it, including everything else which has been happening since the game has released. So one of the things which basically happened, to follow up everything who's not, following the latest news, is that when Dragons Dogma 2 came out, with it, Capcom also released a shop which is actually selling items which you can obtain in the game. Do keep in mind that these items became available after the game was released, so technically before the game came out you were not able to see any of these items which are selling right now, besides, buying the deluxe edition which brought you some of these items. So in the shop itself you had various items which you can collect in the game itself appear as basically DLCs. So one of the first things that people see are Rift Crystals. There are two ways to use Rift Crystals in this game. Number one is to hire good pawns, because the better the pawn is, more Rift Crystals it's going to cost, especially if you are going into an advanced search to search for basically more pawns than you would find on the road. And also you spend Rift Crystals to buy some of the optional cosmetic items, as well as some of the items which we actually see on this list. Besides that, they're also selling Wake Stones, which in the game itself, if you fall down, there is a chance for you to, well, revive yourself with a Wake Stone, or, die and basically, restore an old save. Now, when it comes to the game itself, you are able to find these Wake Stones, or well, more precisely, you're gonna be finding shards when it comes to Wake Stones. So 3 Wake Stone shards is going to give you 1 Wake Stone. Besides that, they're also selling Port Crystal, which is the warp location marker, which is one of the ways to fast travel in this game. When you place a Port Crystal on the map itself, this is basically going to serve as a marker where you can teleport to, and you can place this Port Crystal anywhere in the open world, on the map, where it's not like a very important location. Besides that, they're also selling Art of Metamorphosis, which is the character editor. So in Dragons Dogma 2 you have a barber. If you go to that barber, you have, an ability to change the haircut and some of the basic features. But if you want to really, fully customize your character again from the character creator, you must have one of these books, and do keep in mind that, of course, you can obtain this item within the game itself. They're also selling Makeshift Gaol Key, which is, Gaol is prison, and if you have this key, if you are caught and put in a prison, you can open up the door and pretty much go out. Besides that, they also sell Ambivalent Rift Incest, which is one of the funniest things that they're selling, honestly, is an ability to change your pawn inclination, and inclination in Dragon's Dogma is how your pawn is going to behave, in a sense. Now, besides some of the items which we already talked about, like the Harpy Snare Trap, they're also selling the Camping Kit. And in Dragon's Dogma 2, you have to use a Camping Kit if you are going with long distances, because night does fall in this game, and during the night stronger monsters come out, so if you want to take a break, eat some food, you're going to set up a camp. Now, of course, the camping kit itself can be bought in the game itself. It's not even that expensive, honestly. It is cheaper than buying it in the store, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Being that once you use this item, it disappears from your inventory, because this is one-time use only. And also, one of the mechanics in this game is that if you don't rest at the inn or at your camp for a very long time, especially if you're taking damage, your entire health pool is going to shrink, because, well, your character is getting more tired. So even if you use a health potion or you try to restore your health, it's not going to restore to the max, because, well, as I said, the entire health pool is depleting. And ever since this came out, the reviews on Steam went down the drain, where right now the Dragon's Dogma 2 is sitting at a mixed score of 46% of 25,000 reviews. And a lot of these reviews are basically just mentioning microtransactions and one of the other things, which is the optimization problems with framerate. And this brings us to a next topic of our discussion, being the framerate itself. So on PC the situation is a bit tricky when it comes to framerate in Dragon's Dogma. One of the most noticeable problems which does occur is once you reach the city itself, where framerate itself can dip to a lot. And it's been happening on my PC as well. Keep in mind, you're actually looking at the configuration of my PC, so I'm kind of thinking that maybe, you know, my PC is kind of capable to run this with, you know, at least stable 60 frames, but in the city itself, there is no way that happens. Now, do keep in mind, outside of the city, even though with, you know, slight frame rate hiccups, I wasn't really having huge issues. It is mostly once you go into the town itself, or if there are a lot of things rendering around you, including some of the NPCs, that's where basically your frame rate can drop. And it was going to this point where people were actually plotting to cull the cities of NPCs so their frame rate is going to rise. And I don't recommend that, being that a lot of NPCs in this game can be important later on down the road. Also, do keep in mind, when it comes to PlayStation and Xbox, the situation there is a bit better, but again, when it comes to Dragons Dogma 2 in general, it is running in 30 frames variable frame rate, so it can basically go above 30 frames if it can, but with it, it can also drop below 30 frames. And also the third news which I want to talk about is the inability to start a new character once you start the game. So once you create your character and you go into Dragon's Dogma, the only way to actually have, you know, new game appear is to delete some of the files from the PC, including like the, you know, your save files from the, you know, data folder, or to remove them somewhere else. So right now, without doing that, you cannot really start a new character in this game, which is a bit weird, to be honest. It is definitely an oversight when it comes to their development team. Now, you see, there is one more problem which people started bringing up, and of course, whenever the game has frame rate issues, and it says here that the game is protected by Denuvo, anti-tamper, you know, software, this usually means there are going to be some issues. Now, do keep in mind, when it comes to Denuvo, yes, Denuvo itself can cause frame rate issues, especially because it starts drawing more resources, you know, from the game itself. And at the same time, it's not only, you know, Denuvo, because bad implementation of Denuvo can get you this, but a good implementation of Denuvo is not going to have those issues. But do keep in mind, of course, I'm always against Denuvo type software, because it is simply taking more than it actually gives. And if you look at down here, you're going to see this: anti-tamper 5 different PC within a day machine activation limit. So some people were actually, I think, testing this on a few different machines, and because, well, the ID of your machine changes with every single time you want to try it out on a different, you know, hardware or whatever, people who have tried this more than 5 times were not able to get into the game, which is kinda sad, to be honest. Now, of course, do keep in mind that this is going to trigger only in rare cases if you are trying to, you know, get this game to run on multiple machines and whatever. If you're just running this on 1 machine or 2 machines, you know, up to 5, it's not going to be an actual issue. And all of this culminated in a very bad storm for Capcom itself, where they came out with their own statement saying this: to Dragons Dogma 2 players on Steam, we would like to update you on the status of the following items, about which we have received numerous comments from the community. To all of those looking forward to this game, we sincerely apologize for any inconvenience. Crashes and bug fixes. We are investigating in fixing critical problems such as crashes and freezing. We will be addressing crashes and bug fixes, starting those with the highest priority in patches in the near future. The option of starting a new game. We are looking at adding a new feature to Steam version of the game that is going to allow players that are already playing to restart the game. We will announce more details as soon as we can, and there was one comment saying that this, you know, new game is gonna be an option only available for Steam. We shall see about that, because if it's only available on Steam, that's kinda problematic. Now here they also talk about paid DLCs, which I already talked about, including the Part Crystal, Wake Stone, Rift Crystals, and so on. And also at the end, regarding the frame rate, a large amount of CPU usage is allocated to each character and calculating the impact of their physical presence in various areas. In certain situations where numerous characters appear simultaneously, the CPU usage can be very high and may affect the frame rate. We are aware that in such situations, settings that reduce GPU load may currently have a limited effect. However, we are looking into ways to improve performance in the future. The Dragons Dogma 2 team. Now, for a lot of people, this message was a bit tone deaf regarding the situation. Now, when it comes to my opinion about everything which has been happening, yes, of course that all of these items are optional. That is correct. You don't have to buy a single item from this list in your game and you're gonna be able to obtain all of them. The second thing people have been saying is that yes, Capcom has been doing this for a while. They have been putting up these very weird microtransactions in most of their games, going from Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, and so on and so on. And one of the arguments people kind of bring up is that for the longest time that was okay. Why is actually things, developing as they are right now? Well, I think in my opinion it could be, well, first of all, is that the game is having issues with optimization, especially on PC. So when you have a situation where the game comes out and it has some of these issues, and on top of that, it also has microtransactions, people are going to react in this way. And this argument of, Capcom doing this forever is okay, but there is going to come a time where people are going to catch on to this and there are going to be issues like it is now with Dragons Dogma 2. And it is honestly a shame because I love Dragons Dogma 2. I've been playing Dragons Dogma 2 a lot ever since its release. But this whole conversation with the microtransactions, with, the problems with framerate, they can be solved. They were solved for Cyberpunk, they can be solved for this game as well. But once you add microtransactions on top of it, the actual situation is not going to be that good. Where all of the conversation, which should have been, directed towards how are we enjoying the game, what about vocation, monsters and everything, majority of conversation about this game is about these issues, which is a PR nightmare, and ultimately it's going to hurt the game on the short and maybe long run, because I already have friends which don't follow the latest news, but they have seen some of the controversy from Dragons Dogma 2 and they're like, should I buy this game, should I not? And then you have to say, okay, the game is great, but everything surrounding it, with all of these issues, is what can turn some people away from it. And the moment you have these items within the game, even though they are optional, one of the things people have been mentioning is that slippery slope, because people who are in charge of this decision to do this have looked at the game and thought, which items can we actually sell which people would buy? So already you have to take it into account that there are going to be some decisions about the game which is not necessarily made by the devs, by the executives, where it says, alright, maybe this monster shouldn't really drop a shard of like Wake Stone, maybe it's going to drop something lesser because on the other side we have a shop that we have to sell some items from it. And of course, none of that is very visible in this game because, well, even if you never looked at the actual store itself, you're going to enjoy this game. There is not going to be a problem about it. And as I said, all of these things you can buy in the game. So it is baffling to me that Capcom made this decision ultimately, and what it did is that it just created a PR nightmare that this game could have had a much better time without. And the worst thing about all of this, when you have this PR nightmare, is that you have Itsuno, who is the game director of this game. A long time ago he was talking about why limited fast travel is good for this game, and I made a video about it. And yes, the essence of this game is the journey, the traveling. You shouldn't be having that, with fast travel. But when, executives add this store into the game, ultimately it's just going to backfire towards the devs and towards the game itself, which is honestly a shame. So this is everything for this news video. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I will have my review and some other new guide videos coming out very soon, so don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button, and of course tell me down below in the comments what do you think about all of this. Also check us out on Twitter and Discord, and huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters. This is LKM signing out, and stay classy everyone. Bye bye.